Fearful avoidant is the specific designation that distinguishes this attachment style from the dismissive avoidant examined in most of the previous pieces. The distinction matters because the fearful avoidant is not simply the avoidant who needs more space. They are the avoidant who simultaneously and with equal force wants the closeness and fears it, who approaches and retreats from the same person in the same movement, who is not choosing distance over closeness, but is genuinely, structurally unable to have the closeness without the fear activating the retreat that destroys the very thing the wanting was reaching toward. The dismissive avoidant primarily suppresses the needing. The fearful avoidant cannot suppress it. The needing is too present, too urgent, too close to the surface to be managed into invisibility. What the fearful avoidant suppresses instead is the belief that the needing can be safely met. They want the connection with the full intensity of someone for whom connection is a primary psychological requirement. They also believe, at the structural level, where the beliefs that actually govern behavior live, that the connection will end in the specific, devastating way that the earliest connections ended. That to want is to set up the wanting's destruction. That to need is to guarantee the need will be failed. This belief structure, the wanting and the terror of the wanting coexisting in the same interior, produces a specific and particularly damaging set of lies. Not lies in the sense of deliberate falsehoods. In the sense of deeply held, experientially confirmed, structurally embedded beliefs that feel, from the inside, like truths, but that function, in the relationships they govern, as the precise mechanism of the destruction they are trying to prevent. The first lie, vulnerability, is evidence of weakness that will be used against them. The fearful avoidant learned, in the specific and formative conditions of the attachment environment that shaped them, that the expression of need produced outcomes that made the expression more costly than the suppression. The need was expressed and was met with inconsistency or rejection, or the specific form of conditional responsiveness that taught the child that needing was only safe if the need was the right kind, expressed in the right way at the right time. Or the need was expressed and was used, not always deliberately, not always cruelly, but functionally, as leverage. As information about vulnerability that the attachment figure then used in ways that made the vulnerable expression feel, in retrospect, like a mistake. The adult fearful avoidant carries this learning as a structural belief. Vulnerability is dangerous because it reveals the weakness that will be exploited, the genuine disclosure of what they feel, what they need, what they fear, what they care about. All of this is processed as exposure that creates specific targeted risk. The person who knows what you need can withhold it. The person who knows what you fear can use it. The person who knows what you love can threaten it. Vulnerability is not the path to genuine intimacy. It is the path to the specific, personalized form of loss that genuine intimacy makes possible. This lie destroys relationships because genuine intimacy requires vulnerability, not performance of it. The fearful avoidant is often capable of the performance, of the disclosure that looks vulnerable while remaining sufficiently controlled to prevent actual exposure. But the real thing, the actual, undefended, this is what is true for me disclosure that allows another person to know the actual interior and to be known by it in return. The lie prevents this. Every movement toward genuine disclosure activates the belief that the disclosure creates risk. And the risk activation produces the retreat from the disclosure, the pulling back from the genuine expression at the last moment, the reframing of the vulnerability into something more defended, the systematic replacement of the genuine with the managed in every interaction where the genuine was briefly, almost, possible. The partner receives this as the continuous almost, the almost intimacy that never quite arrives, the almost disclosure that retracts itself before it completes, the almost connection that the fearful avoidance retreat converts repeatedly into the exact outcome the retreat was designed to prevent. The second lie, people leave, and the more they matter, the more certainly they will. The fearful avoidance attachment history has provided a specific and apparently reliable data set. The people who mattered most, the people whose connection was most significant, whose presence was most necessary, whose loss would be most devastating, are the people who left or who were inconsistently available in the way that functional leaving produces, present sometimes, withdrawn others, reliable in neither direction, but most reliably withdrawn in the moments of greatest need. The data set says significance and loss are correlated. The more someone matters, the more certain they're leaving. This lie does not feel like a lie. It feels like an accurate reading of empirical evidence. The evidence is real. The specific experiences that generated the data set actually happened, produced actual loss, created actual costs that the fearful avoidant actually paid. The interpretation of the evidence as a reliable predictor of future events is where the lie lives. The extrapolation from what happened in specific, non-representative, formative attachment relationships to what will happen in all significant relationships is the move that converts genuine historical experience into a belief that governs the present in ways that serve neither the fearful avoidant nor the people who love them. The lie destroys relationships through the specific mechanism of the self-fulfilling prophecy. The fearful avoidant, believing that the significant connection will end in loss, treats the connection in ways that increase the probability of the loss. The withdrawal that arrives when the connection becomes genuinely significant, the sabotage that occurs precisely at the moments of greatest closeness, when the connection is most real and most promising, and therefore, by the lie's logic, most certainly headed toward the devastating loss that genuine connection always produces. The testing behavior that asks repeatedly and with escalating stakes whether the person will leave, behavior that eventually, if sustained long enough, creates the conditions under which the person does leave. The partner of the fearful avoidant is not leaving because the lie is true. They are leaving because the lie has been producing behavior that makes leaving feel, finally, like the only available response to a dynamic that has been, through the operation of the lie, consistently working toward exactly this outcome. The third lie, needing someone is the same as losing yourself. This lie is perhaps the most specifically damaging because it conflates two things that are not the same, dependency and intimacy, in a way that makes genuine intimacy impossible to pursue without the simultaneous felt sense of self-dissolution. The fearful avoidance attachment history produced, in many cases, the specific experience of having their own needs, preferences, and interior life consistently subordinated to the needs and preferences of the attachment figures around them. Needing the attachment figure meant organizing the self around the attachment figure's requirements. The caring for the attachment figure's well-being, the monitoring of the attachment figure's emotional state, the continuous adjustment of the self to the attachment figure's fluctuating availability, all of this produced the experiential fusion of needing and self-loss. To need was to organize the self around the need's object. To love was to disappear into the caring. The adult fearful avoidant carries this fusion as a structural equation. Needing someone equals losing yourself. Genuine attachment equals self-dissolution. The closer you get, the less of yourself remains. And the protection against self-dissolution is the maintenance of the distance that prevents the equation from activating. This lie destroys relationships because the fearful avoidant experiences every genuine movement toward intimacy as a threat to the integrity of the self. Every increase in closeness generates the felt sense of self-erosion, not the actual erosion, not the genuine loss of self that the lie predicts, but the felt sense of it. The body's memory of what closeness produced in the original attachment environment, activating in the presence of current closeness and generating the retreat that the original environment made adaptive. The partner experiences this as the avoidance withdrawal precisely at the moments of genuine connection, as the specific, bewildering pattern of closeness producing distance rather than more closeness, as the experience of being with someone who seems to find the genuine meeting of them threatening in a way that has nothing to do with the partner's actual behavior and everything to do with the equation. The fearful avoidant is running against every increment of genuine intimacy. The fourth lie, their authentic self is too much or not enough. This lie is the deepest and the most quietly devastating because it operates at the level of identity rather than at the level of relational strategy. The fearful avoidant does not only believe that relationships end in loss, or that vulnerability creates risk, or that needing means losing the self. They believe, at the foundational level where beliefs about the self live, that the actual, unmanaged, fully authentic version of who they are is not the kind of person that genuine love can sustain. The belief takes two forms that are not opposites but are expressions of the same core wound. The too much form, the genuine interior, the intensity of the feeling, the depth of the need, the specific quality of what the fearful avoidant actually is when they are not managing their self-presentation, is excessive, is the kind of overwhelming that makes people leave, is the reason that genuine expression of the self, in the fearful avoidance experience, has produced the withdrawal rather than the drawing toward that genuine expression is supposed to produce in healthy attachment. The not enough form, beneath the intensity, the actual person, the fundamental, irreducible self, stripped of the qualities that might make them interesting or valuable or worth staying for, is insufficient, is the kind of ordinary, unimpressive, ultimately replaceable person that significant love does not direct itself toward, is not the kind of person who gets to be genuinely loved in the sustained, unconditional, you specifically way that the fearful avoidant most deeply needs to be loved. Both forms produce the same relational behavior, the hiding of the actual self behind the managed version, the presentation of what seems most likely to be received rather than what is actually true, the continuous, exhausting performance of the version of the self that might be enough without being too much, the Goldilocks self that the fearful avoidant is perpetually trying to calibrate into existence. The lie destroys relationships by making the self that is being related to not actually the person. The partner is in a relationship with the managed presentation. They cannot be in a genuine relationship with the actual person because the actual person is not being offered, is being protected behind the performance, behind the fear that the genuine exposure of the actual self would confirm the lie's most fundamental claim, that the authentic self is not the kind of self that gets to be loved. These four lies are not stupidity or weakness or the deliberate sabotage of connections that could have been good. They are the logical, survival-oriented, attachment history-generated conclusions of someone who learned in the most formative period of their development that certain things about love and closeness and the expression of need were true, and who has been operating from those conclusions ever since, in relationships that are producing the outcomes the lies predict, which the lies then interpret as confirmation of their accuracy. The lies are self-confirming. That is their most insidious quality. The behavior generated by the lies produces outcomes that look like evidence for the lies. The vulnerability that is withheld because vulnerability is dangerous never gets the chance to demonstrate that in the current relationship with this specific person, it might actually be safe. The connection that is sabotaged when it becomes most significant never gets the chance to demonstrate that significant connections can survive without the devastating loss the lie predicts. The authentic self that is hidden behind the performance never gets the chance to be received, which means the belief that the authentic self is too much or not enough never encounters the actual evidence of what a genuine response to the genuine self might be. The only exit from the self-confirming loop is the specific, terrifying, against every instinct act of testing the lie against the current reality rather than against the historical evidence, of offering the vulnerability and staying present to see whether the current person responds the way the lie predicts, of allowing the closeness to develop without the preemptive sabotage, and remaining present to see whether the loss the lie promises actually arrives, of revealing something genuine about the actual self and waiting in the full discomfort of genuine exposure to find out whether the current relationship confirms the lie or contradicts it. This testing is the work The specific, ongoing, imperfect, requires support work of the fearful avoidance healing. It is not performed alone. It requires the right therapeutic container, the right relational context, the right partner whose consistency and genuine presence provides the corrective experience that the lie's self-confirming loop has been preventing. But it is the only work that actually reaches the lies at the level where they live, not the intellectual understanding of the attachment history, not the cognitive reframing of the belief, the actual, lived, experiential encounter with a present tense reality that contradicts the lie's prediction, and the staying present long enough to let the contradiction register. That is what breaks the lies, not understanding them, surviving their being tested, and discovering, in the surviving, that the outcome the lie predicted did not arrive, that the vulnerability was met, that the closeness did not dissolve the self, that the connection survived the significance rather than ending because of it, that the authentic self, too much and not enough and exactly as complicated and exactly as worthy as all authentic selves are, was received and stayed.